What was that, Richard?
Recording in progress.
Oh,
And we've got that. Okay, good evening, everybody. We've got 8 or 10 people, which is great. I actually have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to share with you guys. Let me just sort that out. Ooh, PowerPoint, come back. Okay. Sorry, guys. 2 seconds. A slight hiccup. Chat amongst yourselves. Chat amongst yourselves. Very, IT's gone all wrong.
Oh dear, it happens to the
putting it
best
on
of
and
us.
off again.
It's all right. I'm nearly there. It's all just gone wrong. So let's try.
Hooray, that looks good.
Yeah, perfect.
Hopefully, all you have is a first page slide. Hopefully, is that right?
Yeah,
that's right.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, brilliant. Right. So ahead of this year's BCC starting up, which I know that Matthew is hoping, weather permitting, that's probably going to be the May bank holiday, as I say, weather permitting. So what we thought is that we'd just do a quick low-level run-through of what the BCC is about, maybe what you need to consider if you're going to become part of the BCC, who runs it, how it's organised, how the day is organised, and what will happen on the day. So that's really what we want to run through tonight. For those that have already done BCC rounds in the past, I'm sure it's going to be very boring. Hopefully, for those who haven't, it will be interesting and give you some sort of idea of what the BCC is, what happens, and what you need to do. So I've got a few slides. Most of them are picture orientated. Some are a bit wordy, but let's crack on in and see what we've got. I think as there's not that many of us, if anybody wants to ask questions, just dive in. If you want to unmute the mic, shout a question out. Hopefully I can answer it. If I can't, what we'll do is we'll find the answer and then we can post it at some other time. So the Advanced British Club Challenge. So what is it? Well, it's a friendly competition for recreational paragliding pilots. And I term friendly is a relative term. Nobody's going to get beaten up on site, but everybody wants to win still. So yeah, it's a great competition, friendly atmosphere. It's organised at the club levels. It's endorsed by the BHPA competitions panel. It's sponsored by Advanced Paragliders, and it's focused on providing a team flying environment and an introduction to XC flying, pilot progression, pilot development. And to that end, it has a lot of awards, and it awards people at the end of the year for their first XC, for the length of the XC. I think, am I right, Jack? Did you have an award last year? Am I right?
I didn't get an award. No, I had my first XC, but I didn't get anything. So
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe it wasn't long enough.
Yes, you did,
okay.
Jack. You got a club trophy.
Oh, that was the club trophy, but not on the
not on the
PCC still.
Yeah.
with you. Okay. And the national coordinator is Matthew Tandy. I'm sure some of you have potentially met him on site. He's been flying some of the Sky Surface sites recently. Great guy, nice guy. He's RAF, I believe, and he's been the national coordinator for some years, and he does a hell of a lot of work behind the scenes to make this happen every year, as do the club coordinators, which we'll come on to in a little bit. So, who's it for? So it's actually for all grades of pilot. Although obviously there's the issue of going XC as a CP rated, because it's endorsed by the BHPA, and the way that the way the competition is structured, it's recognised that it is suitable for all grades of pilot. But there are some things you do need to consider. Crowded skies, it can and does get busy. You know, I think on Blanche last year we had about 80 pilots in the competition. There are times when a lot of those get into the air at the same time. It thins out, but you do need to be happy flying in close proximity with other pilots. You also need to think about thermic conditions. You know, big hills, especially early in the year when we have some spicy thermals like we do now. Even in May, June, we can get some very strong thermic conditions. So you should be happy flying in thermic, potentially reasonably rough air. You need to have some thermaling experience. You're going to be thermaling out in a crowded sky. You need to be able to do linked 360s in both directions and be happy to do that in company. And airspace and instruments. You need to have a working knowledge of airspace, what you can fly into, what you can't fly into. And you also need to be able to use instruments, to know your instruments, to know the software, and to be happy using it while you're flying. So it's one thing being able to operate XC-track, fly sky high on the ground. Sometimes that's not quite so easy when you're actually flying, especially in company. So you need to know your instruments and be prepared to use it. Yeah, so airspace. Depending on where we fly, if it's Southeast Wales, actually airspace isn't so much of a problem. But with some of the sites that are used, airspace can become an issue. So you need to have at least a good working knowledge of what the airspace is around you, what you can and can't do, what NOTAMs there are. And one of the big ones is landing out. So you need to be prepared to land out. You need to consider how you prepare for landings, because ultimately you're going to be landing potentially for the first time away from the hill. So you're not top landing, you're not bottom landing at your launch site. You are for the first time potentially going to be somewhere you've never seen before, in territory you've never seen before. And you know, sometimes that can be quite challenging, especially in the valleys up around Wales. And as you can see on yeah, the bottom actually shows the valleys behind Abergwenny. So this is essentially what you'd be flying over if you left Blanche. So there's some deep valleys down the back there. So you need not only to be prepared to land out, but you also need to think about how you're going to set up for those landings, how to assess wind, to choose likely spots. And that can be a major challenge if you haven't really done that before. And we won't click that on. Let's turn the pointer off. And the other thing is there's always, although it's a friendly competition, there's always some pressure to score points. It's a team competition. Everybody wants to do well for the team. So there's always that element of, I want to get off the ground, I want to go and fly, and I want to fly and score points. So, you know, that can lead to a considerable amount of pressure. And what we don't want to do, especially if you haven't flown XC before, is pile a load of pressure onto a pilot to score points, to find somewhere to land, to get his feet off the ground, to fly in thermic air and in company. So we don't want that. What we want is for it to be fun and exciting, an enjoyable day on the hill. If you can get away, you can get away, and that's great. So some things you really need to consider if you're going to think about flying BCC is what stage you're at. Do you think right now it's suitable for you? Are you better to come along and just actually maybe take part in the day, but not take part in the competition? So it's really a personal choice, and it's very difficult pilot to pilot to know where everybody's head is on things like that. But what we don't want to do is pressurize people because they're part of the team. So think carefully if you want to be part of the BCC. And what you've got to remember is that, and we'll see in a minute the way the teams are structured, you don't have to decide today that you want to do BCC. Halfway through the season, you can come along and join in. So, you know, you can do a bit more flying, flying, you can get a little bit more experience, and then maybe later in the year, before the end of the season, say, hey, I want to join in. So don't feel pressured straight away to just join up and come along. So a little bit about the rounds. So any of the clubs that are entered into the BCC can call a round. They're all completely organised by the individual clubs. When they do call a round, they'll be announced on the BCC website, and the club coordinators, of which Viv Forlaker is our club coordinator, will also announce them on the BCC Telegram group, which we'll come to later. Technically, that web address for BCC up there is actually correct, but there is a new website that has just come online for registration, and Tim Bishop, who is, I'm not sure is with us tonight, but Tim Bishop of the Avon group has single-handedly built a whole new software suite for the BCC. It's been extensively tested recently. Again, Viv has been very much a part of that. I think she's probably put many hours into the testing of that with Tim. So that website is actually active, but I believe the new one will take over from that completely for this season. If you do go onto that website, you can still see the rules, you can see past seasons. So it does have some use at the moment, but it will change. So once they've been announced, the questions, they can be countrywide. This is just a selection of the last few years of where some of the rounds have been called. So as you can see, to be frank, often a lot of them are in South East Wales, 100 House, Talibont, Pandy, that will be Blarenge, but they also go further north. And they have been, that one's Bell Hill, so Wessex called that one season before last. I think that's Milk, and I'm not sure where that was. So as you can see, it's a countrywide effort. So there's a considerable amount of travel potentially to go and take part in some of these rounds. So, and what we don't know is when they're going to be called with very much notice. In some circumstances, pilot numbers are limited. I think that's especially true of the Derbyshire sites, which are these sites up around here. So a decision is made at the club level as to how many pilots they really can accommodate on site. And this sort of links back to something we were talking about earlier about the crowding and having too many pilots in the sky at any one time. So that is dealt with by balloting, which is a system that the BCC use to limit the number of clubs that are providing a team. So once the round is called, all the clubs that can get a team together and want to participate will say, right, we have a team, we're available, we want to come along. If there's a limitation on the number of teams, Matthew will ballot, which will mean X number of teams go through. The teams that wanted to come along but get balloted out will then get priority on the next ballot. So it is a fair system as such. But it's the only way that they can control numbers on some of the sites. And sometimes that is down to landowner issues as well, which again, I think is the Derbyshire problem. They just aren't allowed to have any more pilots. So balloting can be an issue. So although we say we want to go along, it doesn't mean we're automatically in the competition for those rounds. So the round will be called approximately a week before. Usually, yep. Sorry, who's that? Sorry,
I think it was just interference, Neil.
Okay, so yeah, so the round will be called approximately a week before. It varies. It's always done on a look ahead for the weather and RAS generally. Usually about a week, sometimes a little bit shorter. It will always be a weekend and or a bank holiday. So it will always be Saturday, Sunday. If a bank holiday can be tagged on, it could be a 3-day event. Usually by the Thursday, it's either confirmed or not confirmed. So as the weather evolves all the way through to Thursday, usually a decision is made by Thursday evening as whether the round is going to go on, and people start to travel then, often on Friday, but sometimes on Saturday. Having said that, obviously, with the British weather, who knows whether it'll actually happen. The other thing is that every day is a different round. So a weekend is 2 rounds. What that does mean is you can get balloted out of one day, but get balloted into the next. So that's not so bad when the sites are quite close to you, but if you are heading to the Lake District, for instance, going up for one day is, quite a commitment. So that is one of the downsides of balloting is you can end up with only one day's worth of rounds, but a long drive. So it's something we do consider sometimes when we think about should we put a team in. It's very difficult, but it's just the way the competition is organised. And pilot numbers, well, we've already talked about that. So this is back to the balloting and limiting of pilot numbers. So that's how it's organised as balloting. So what's a team? So 6 people, but it can be up to 6 people. And I know last year Wessex won a round with a single pilot. So Sean Staines turned up to around, I think it was at 100 House. He was the only Wessex member there, and he actually won that round for Wessex. So we always try to get 6 people. I think, Jerry, did we have 6 people every time last year? I can't remember.
We did.
I don't think at Pandy, which didn't happen in the end, I think we had 5.
Did
if I
we?
remember
Yeah.
rightly.
Well, the ones I was at, we had 6, I think.
Yeah,
Too many.
I think so. I think what we struggle with is we have a lot of people. It's certainly last year that showed an interest, but we actually did struggle to put 6 people together. I think we did just about. I hope this year we seem to have a lot of new members, a lot more people actually interested in XC flying within Condors at the moment, which is great. And hopefully this year we'll have more people who are available. What that will mean, obviously, the downside of that is that sometimes people who are available and want to fly, maybe they can't because we have to adjust and make it fair on everybody who wants to fly. But it'll be interesting to see this year how that works out, because last year it was tricky to get 6 people. But hopefully we will have full teams this year.
I mean, this year, the club has paid for this Condors, obviously. Have paid for 2 teams.
Yes.
And if I just say, Neil, James is asking quite a few interesting questions.
Okay.
When you get a chance, James, just sort of dive in. I don't think. Are you happy with that, Neil?
Yeah, dive in, mate. Dive in, James. Go for it.
Yeah, I remember seeing the names. So is it very simply Condors A team or B team, or do we have a specific name made up?
I presume Viv has put us in as Condors Red and Condors Blue again.
Oh,
as the
okay.
two. That's what she did last year. I presume that's historic. So I guess that's what she's done, but I haven't asked. But she has entered 2 teams.
And they're not a sort of separate out into skill level or whatever. It's just 2 teams.
No, exactly. There's no priority within the teams. There's nothing. To be honest, I mean, well, if we can get 2 teams together, that will be great. If we can get 12 people and 2 teams entered for the hills that will stand having that many teams, that will be great. And I hope we can. So that does give us some opportunities. But again, this comes down to the balloting and number of pilots. But wherever we can, we'll give everybody an opportunity to fly as much as we can. So yeah, so anything else, James? Do you have other questions?
Well, it always with long distances and so on, it makes sense to pull people together in vehicles, and there was still, got the odd person with COVID. Symptoms aren't as strong, they might still be able to fly.
Yeah.
Will we still allow people that unfortunately might have COVID, keep them to sort of together and things like that?
Oh, COVID. I don't know.
Or is that too complex an issue at the moment?
I think if somebody's got COVID, they've got to keep it to themselves, would be my view.
Yeah.
But we'll be all up for sharing and being as eco as we possibly can. Yeah.
And I think we've got retrieves to do, so people are going to go XC or at least try to go XC. So we've got people doing retrieves. Inevitably we're going to have carfuls of people. The issue of travelling up is interesting because it depends how we're doing that. Often people are staying overnight, so we're at a campsite. I tend to go up in the van, just sleep in the back of the van. Others take camper vans. So how we do that, I mean, if people want to share cars, it's up to them. If they can organise something, that's great. But yeah, it usually pans out. There is a major problem actually this year. So for the Southeast Wales sites, most people stayed at Park Farm at Crickham. That unfortunately has shut this year. So there's a lot of talk on the BCC at the moment about what we're going to do about that, where we're going to stay. I don't know yet. We'll find somewhere, but Park Farm was excellent.
There are a couple of campsites that have been earmarked for the Dragon. I'm happy to share the links for those.
Okay, so that'd be useful. Yeah, that'd be useful, Jerry, because I think inevitably that's Crickhowell as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Crickhowell. It's Ali who organises the Dragon to the pool.
Yeah. So that's going to be one of the issues this year. Park Farm was so convenient, so cheap, big field. You just drove into it. You paid the guy £7 a night or whatever it was, and showers, everything you wanted. That's all gone, unfortunately. So who knows? But we will sort it out before we go. We'll all organise.
Rick, what are you eating? Is that poppadom? It's very crunchy.
There's somebody making a lot of noise.
Ian, that's it. What are you eating?
So sorry, I thought I was muted. It is poppadoms. I'll mute myself now.
There's always one. There's always one.
It's all gone quiet in the background.
Oh,
how nice!
Making me hungry.
Okay. So, yeah, look, if there's any questions, just shout it out. Just interrupt. It's fine. So, yeah, up to 6 members. Declare your availability. You have to be eligible to fly for the club. So, eligibility to fly for the club. Once you have flown a BCC round for a club, you cannot fly for another club in that season. And we had this a couple of times last year where people were being asked to fly for Wessex was a particular one where Richie potentially flew for them. That's fine. Fly for another club. If that's the way it works out, that's great. What it does mean is you can't then fly for Condors if you've flown for Wessex. So your first BCC round fixes that club for the rest of the season.
Neil?
Yeah.
Sorry. Is that the same as XE League then? Whereas, I mean,
Yeah, well,
I've got like 5 clubs on my XE League thing, but Condors is the primary one.
Is your primary one, yeah. So the BCC rules say you should set your primary club to the club that you are flying for BCC, if that makes sense, or the other way around. So yeah, so it's your primary club should be set if you're flying for Condors. There's something on that in a minute. Team captain, so there will be a team captain nominated. They will normally be well versed in XC flying, and they will deal with round administration, questions, mentoring, team briefs, all of the stuff the rest of us don't really want to care about. We just want to go and fly. The team captain has to do all of that. They have to make sure the scores are in. They have to make sure everybody lands safely. So that's all down to the team captain, and they will deal with all of that. Right, so on the day, there will be some briefings. Firstly, there'll be a captain's briefing. It won't last very long. All of these briefings usually take place in the car park. They tend not to take place on site. Some sites they will, but mostly it's in the car park. The captains will have a short briefing. Then the pilots will have a briefing, and the particular areas they'll look at: safety. There'll be an overview of the weather, so overview of RAS for the day. There'll be a turn direction allocated. Because of the number of pilots in the air, they will either allocate a right or a left-hand turn direction. They usually say within 1 to 2 kilometres of the hill. It does generally work. You'll always get some people turning the other way. It just happens. But generally, from the safety perspective, they like to set a turn direction for each round. They'll go over the airspace. So the airspace you're likely to encounter on the particular track for the wind that day. There'll be a radio frequency set for emergencies. Interestingly, radios aren't compulsory. They're strongly recommended, but they're not compulsory within the rules. So if you don't have a radio, that actually isn't an issue. You can fly, but you won't obviously get any emergency information. A landing time will be set because you actually have to be feet on the ground by a certain time of the day. In the summer, that's usually quite late. It'll be something like 8:30 at night. But what that means is that your team captain has to have reported back through the BCC website that all pilots are safe by that time. Also, if you land after that time, I believe your flight won't count. And there'll be a day's task. So for most places, that's normally basically an XC flight. It isn't always that. Sometimes it can be a ridge run. It depends on the weather and the site, but almost always it will be an XC max distance.
Quick question.
Yeah.
If there's a numpty which hasn't charged a radio or forgotten a radio, are there anybody with spare radios that could save the day for that pilot?
I will always have a spare radio with me.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah. Look, I mean, radios are useful for 2 reasons, really. I mean, there is the emergency thing, which is useful, and it does happen. Pandy last year, they had to call everybody out of the air, and they had an air ambulance come in. They had the helicopter in for an accident on takeoff. So it's useful for that. It's also actually useful for the team in some ways, because if you get 2 or 3 people in the air, or the whole team in the air at the same time, if that happens, it's actually handy just to be able to talk to each other especially if you can go over the back together. So you know, it isn't compulsory. You can still fly without a radio if, as you say, some numpty hasn't charged their radio, or it's got switched on in their bag and the batteries run out. It isn't going to stop you flying. But often people do have spare radios. It sounds like Richard's always got a spare radio.
I have now, yeah.
You have now, okay.
Just a quick question. Just a quick question. Sorry. What about this new Zello app? Are we thought about using that?
Yeah. So I know Wessex were using it on all of their BCC rounds last year with quite a lot of success. The only issue you want to think about is Zello does need data. So usually in the air, that's fine. But I think on some of the sites, it's quite limited, you know, if one person's on the ground, potentially. So yes, we do have a Zello group, do we not?
Yes.
I'm not a user of Zello. Yeah?
Yes. Yeah, I set it up. Yeah, that's right.
That's right. Okay, I am on it.
Okay.
I'm just not a big user of it, I have to admit. Jerry and I have used it once or twice, I think, haven't we?
Yeah, I've started experimenting with it, and you definitely need a PPT, especially on iPhone, to use it. You definitely need a PPT and also preferably some sort of headset.
Okay.
Otherwise, I think on Android you can. James will tell me, but you can overlay a button on iPhone, which means you're constantly having to app switch in flight, which is not a great.
Only with not your Apple phone can't do that.
With XC Track you can overlay a button that actually activates Zello then.
Yeah, but then then that button stays open on XE. If you use it on the Android, the button stays open for quite a long time after.
So being IT illiterate,
yeah,
what's the advantage of Zello over using a PTT radio?
Zero, really. I'd go with radio.
No interference, so you don't get crackle or breakups in conversation.
You can have private groups as well, which is quite nice. You can have everyone's group and everyone's there. Rather than
VHF and UHF on radios, because I'm a radio ham as well. It's pretty damn good line to sight.
It's not that.
Yeah, but Zello's like it's for like Telegram almost, isn't it? But with comms. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with Zello is that if the two parties or the multiple parties, as long as they've got a data connection, the separation between them is irrelevant. So, you know, a yard, a mile, 10 miles, 100 miles, it doesn't actually matter. So Zello does have some advantages, and I think actually we should try to use it this year. At least have it as an option alongside the radios. So
I've experimented with both. So I've got two microphones. I look like an insect. I've got my left.
Two microphones.
Two microphones like that. So it comes like that, and then so I look like a giant baby.
Oh, and we established there was a 4-second delay, wasn't there, Jerry? Yeah. You started talking, and it took 4 seconds for the transmission to actually get to me, and I was 2 feet away from you. Remember on call?
Yeah. So my experience, I had a radio and a bad PPT situation in Zello. Neither was working. So that's right. The whole lot. But it's the PPT really helps. But I just don't really know where to put the button at the moment.
I think one of the problems with radios on BCC is most people's radios are single channel. Some are dual watch, but most aren't. So if you've got a radio tuned to the emergency frequency, they don't want any chatter on that. So actually, the radio becomes useless for inter-team communication unless everybody's got dual channel or 2 radios. So Zello then becomes the advantage for inter-team, and you can have your radio just tuned to the emergency channel.
But surely, Neil, you just change channel. I mean, you can have in your memory your emergency channel and your team channel.
Yeah, but easy. At the same time, can you? You don't know if someone's talking on the emergency channel.
No, but you just flick between the two.
But your emergency, well,
when you need to do that though.
Yeah, I think the emergency channel is only necessary when you're really in front of takeoff. So when you're at the takeoff, because if you've actually already gone over the back, the emergency channel becomes superfluous because you're already away from the hill, you're flying XD. If a helicopter's coming in, it's really just coming into the launch. That's where the access go, or so whether it really, once you're away from the hill, you could change frequencies. I think the difficulty is with the emergency channel, when you're still on the hill, you've either got to have that on the whole time on the emergency channel, or not bother with a radio for emergencies. So all I'm saying is, I mean, you're right. Zello actually becomes the way out of that, is you can have a team Zello channel and put your radio on for emergency. I think we've just got to play with it this year. Yeah. We can just play with it and just see what happens. If people want to use Zello, that's great. Some will, some won't. Some won't have it set up. We'll just have to play it by ear.
Yeah, on chat, Neil, Ian's golfers made an interesting comment. Yeah. The other advantage of Zello is that it's legal, whereas of course 2 meter isn't.
Yes, true.
And I happen to be doubly legal because I'm a registered radio ham. I'm not allowed to broadcast from the air either.
Sure. Okay.
And also, of course, he does make the point. There's on 2 meter. If you miss a call, you've missed it. That's it.
Yeah. True.
I just happen to like radios.
Neil, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can thoroughly recommend Zello. I've been using it for the last 6 months.
Yeah.
It's easy to use. I was talking to Grant in Colombia from Weymouth.
Right, yeah, yeah.
I've got a simple setup. I've got a PTT on my brake handle, so it's no interference with handling the wing. Push to talk, not a 4-second delay. It's instant. And I got a headset, which is a Chips 2. Nothing could be simpler, and it cost me £100.
Yeah.
I've had trouble with radios for the last 20 years, with interference, with people not following radio procedure, and miscommunication, like somebody saying, "Oh, it's over here, Bill."
Yeah. Yeah.
Zello works perfectly in a team, and it works perfectly in groups. It works perfectly one-on-one.
Sure.
If you've got it, play with it.
Yeah. And I agree, Russell. I think I haven't noticed a 4-second delay. I think sometimes there is a slight delay. But frankly, I think it's not long enough that it's really going to cause any issues. I think certainly the Wessex guys have been using Zello. I know Steve has been pushing it, yourself, Russell, for a while now. And you guys have been using it extensively. And I was talking to you down at East the other day. I was listening. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a very good point. As Richard has just said, it's legal. We will try it. I think all we can do this year is give it a go and see what happens. And I'm sure it'll be fine. So the last thing is there'll be a site brief. Everybody should have read the site guide anyway. Hopefully they have. There'll be a site brief on the day. They do ask that everybody attends that site brief, even if you've flown there before, because sometimes, because of the number of pilots, because of certain conditions, sometimes that site brief deviates from the site guide. So that'll be done on the day, and that is the morning of the round. And then it's just flying. The day is open. They will all the teams tend to just spread out along the launch and just sit it out or decide when they're going to fly. Some teams fly as teams, some fly as solo. Team flying is quite difficult sometimes. So you tend to get little gaggles go, or people just decide to take off. frankly, how the day develops is how the day develops. You've just got to sit there. Some people decide they want to go early. Some decide to leave it a little bit later. It depends on the forecast. Depends how many people they see climbing out. So, you know, in the end, what I'm saying is it's really down to the individual generally, but we'll all sit there and chat the usual parabolics most of the time while we wait, as we wait. One important thing about BCC is it's not just a one-shot wonder. From the time that the team brief ends to the time that they've told you to have your feet on the ground, you can take off as many times as you want. So, Coronation Street.
Oh,
Who's watching
who's
Coronation
got
Street?
Coronation Street?
A lot of junk food at the shops.
Good old Coronation Street.
Classic.
Yeah, it always will be. Always. Yeah, you can take off, you can land, and you can go back to launch as many times as you want. So then you just declare the longest flight of the day. So doing the top to bottom is not the end of your day. You know, so you can risk it. Obviously, getting back to takeoff again can be troublesome on some of the sites. But people do it. People will fly 2 or 3 flights in a day. I think, Jack, you did more than one a couple of days, didn't you? Not singling, but
yeah, I had obviously top to bottom. I landed in a build-up area. I got a lift back to the hill to the launch, and I took off again.
And then went XC, yeah.
And then went XC, yes.
Yeah.
So that was my second chance, which I took.
Yeah. So it's.
Does the Condor budget stretch to a, you know, we want to win this, does it stretch to a paid retrieve fleet of drivers? Ready? Just come and get us so we can.
Yeah, that's the ideal, isn't it? Is to have a dedicated retrieve driver who can just go, right, you know, you can risk it. And if you end up at the bottom, well, they're down there waiting for you. It would be great. I don't think we can stretch to that, Jerry. I don't know. Can we? We have to talk to
Richard said the coffers were bulging this year, so.
Oh, really?
No, he didn't.
I thought he did.
And the answer's no.
Oh,
I mean, it's fun, but I mean, between us, somebody will bomb out early, and then they'll zap around and pick everybody else up, and it's part of the crack, isn't it? Really.
Well, the other thing you've got to remember is if you do bomb out, there's probably other people bombing out as well, and generally. They're all bombing out in the bottom landing field, and so what you find is there are people. There's more than one person trying to get back up, and usually between you, somebody will be coming down to pick them up. So, you know, there's every possibility of getting back up to take off and just do it all again. So, you know, you can take a risky punt. It might work, it might not. Go back up, fly again, and you know. As I say, there are plentiful retrieves, both from the bottom landing field usually, and we've always sorted out retrieves quite easily out the back as well. So between the team or between other teams, yeah, James.
I found that electric bicycles are very handy for getting around.
Yeah.
New technology. Is it worth bringing an electric bike, dropping it off somewhere if you land near it, come and just, you know, just let people cycle up the hill, drop it off. Oh yeah, how do you bring it back down again? Logistically, I don't know.
Yeah.
You can just send it off, can't you? It's electric. You'll just drive back down.
Yeah. Drive itself.
Oh yeah, like a drone. Return to home.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. Like a test.
Richard's on the club's budget.
Don't try that at Merthyr. That bike's gone.
I was just thinking exactly the same, Ian. Yeah.
Yeah. Well. I'm sure there's going to be plentiful retrieves. There always has been. You know, when you've got 70 or 80 pilots flying, there's always loads of retrieves going on. There's always somebody's landed near you. It's always been fairly easy in the past, so we don't really think we have too much problem. Just a little quick note on scoring. So scoring is done through XC League, which has been mentioned a few times. So what you need to have is a track log. It needs to be IGC format, and you need to upload it to XC League. What they will do is an airspace infringement. if you invalidate your track by going into airspace, not only does it not count for XC League, it doesn't count for BCC either, because it essentially gets wiped off of the XC League, and the BCC pick all of their scoring up from the XC League. So it's particularly important that you don't infringe airspace. Jerry, I noticed you didn't infringe airspace the other day and your track was valid.
I know.
Well
Oh, well done.
Well, I actually had a look because Jerry said to me he was worried he'd infringed airspace. So I had a look while I think he was probably traveling. And I think if you'd done one more turn in that thermal, Jerry, you'd have been in airspace.
Oh yeah,
it was meters. I think it was 20 meters it measured that I could measure.
Precision flying there. Precision flying, Neil.
Yeah, precision flying. but it is important. It is very important. Last year,
airspace, does it alter horizontally or is it just vertically with pressure? It's probably a basic question.
Right. Let's talk about flight levels now, James.
It's a flight level.
Oh, okay, flight level.
I can tell you something actually about flight level. I was on a club coach course 2 weeks ago. What was actually quite interesting on the day was how concerned the BHPA are about flight level infringement now that everybody has been buying EC devices. They actually made a point of saying a lot of pilots, they do it for the exam, then they forget it, and they forget that flight level airspace can be infringed quite easily because it moves up and down with pressure. And they are highly concerned about it because now so many pilots are actually visible to ATC. Those infringements become scarily important. So just a thought, flight level infringements. So it's only the flight level ones that move up and down, James, I suppose it's a short answer to that.
Is there an app which actually shows like a little blurry zone, which shows the change in pressure? So you can add a margin of error so that if you don't calculate it.
But doesn't XD check calculate that automatically? That's the whole pressure thing.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, you should set up your standard pressure.
Yeah.
No, but XC check does it automatic.
XC League will check it. The trouble is, if you've already infringed it, you're screwed. So your track is invalid. Thankfully, most of the airspace actually isn't pressure related. It will just say, 3,500, 5,000 feet, not flight level 35. But there are places where it does. So it's something to think about. Obviously it's covered in the pilot exam, how to calculate the actual height of the airspace on any particular day for a particular pressure. It's obviously not easy to do while you're flying. So it might be something when we look at, what we tend to do is we look at airspace for the track, we can see that airspace before we fly. We may have to look at that and just do a quick calculation on the day. But yes, it's one of the issues.
Neil, can I interrupt a moment?
Yeah.
Yeah, a number of flights from Worcester Beacon the other day were not allowed because of infringements.
I heard that.
There's a lot of talk on the Southwest XE group about particular apps and how some information on their air maps is missing.
Ah, okay.
It's worth a read on the Southwest XE group.
Yeah, I was part of that discussion actually earlier, Russell. Yeah, it's how some of the information is presented by the apps themselves. And you're right. Sometimes it leaves a little bit to be desired. But you're right. I'd also heard that some of those long flights had been excluded for airspace infringement. But as I say, on the club coach course, the BHPA are really, really concerned about.
Absolutely.
As they should be. Because, as they say, especially if you're in some of the major London regions, that can be a considerable issue. So, so they're very hot on it at the moment. Last year, I think, sorry, excuse me, one of the rounds from the Blue Range, a Wessex pilot did the longest XC of the day, but he infringed airspace at 3,500 feet, way over the back. So his track was deleted, but he would have been the winner of the round. So it's unfortunate, but it happens. So need to keep a very close eye on airspace, know your instruments, and make sure you know what you can and can't fly in.
One other question while we're on, and I might have to leave in a minute, is there a Jeremy Bix? He's asked a question. I can't find him on Telegram.
Jeremy Bix?
Yeah.
Is that? Yeah. He's asked a question. Sorry, go on.
Well, he's on this.
I will talk to him personally if I can find him on Telegram. I can't find him on Telegram.
North Devon. And he's on. Jeremy Bix is on this call.
Jeremy's here.
I'm here, and I'm on Condors PAT, and I'm on Condors chat. So you've just got to spell my name right.
I can't find John Condors chat.
Okay, that's Russell, is it? I'll direct message you later then, Russell. Thanks.
Okay, Wilco, Jerry, thanks. I've got to go, chap, so thank you very much.
Cheers, Russell. See you soon.
Bye.
So your flights must be greater than 5 kilometers to be valid. So that's the minimum you can fly, which actually isn't that much. They need to be scored as a turnpoint flight, and this is a deviation from the rules. If you look at the rules are being updated to include this. This became valid from last year. Interestingly, a turnpoint flight rather than open distance will always score higher, and it's because it allows a number of points. So you've got your start, your takeoff, your landing, and 3 points in between. So for instance, if you're at Lorange, you could fly out over Abergavenny and do a little sort of triangle bit and then climb out and fly out over the back. So you'll have your open XC distance plus a couple more points over Abergavenny. So so that gives you a way of scoring a little bit more as well. So that's the way the scoring works. And then they apply a formula. And I just put it on here because it's interesting, in as much as club pilot and pilot score 100%. If you're an advanced pilot, which there aren't too many around, I don't think, but you're in 90%. Wing classes, A or Bs are scoring at 100%. Cs are at 85, Ds are at 70, and two-liners, of which some people do fly two-liners on BCC, are down to 55%. And then they apply all of that to give yourself a pilot score. So
that is actually a very good way, Neil, of showing that it's a fun event for, if you like, sport pilots.
Yeah, it's weighted towards the sport end rather than the professional competition end. It's exactly that. Yeah, exactly that. It's there. The maximum scoring is with the lower class wings. So that's just how they end up with a pilot score for each individual pilot. And then that amalgamates to become the team score. And then they rank the teams for the day. So that's how scoring works.
Does that mean that you have an advanced pilot digging out an A-wing?
Yes. Well,
yeah.
Quickly, that can happen. Yeah. You could have that. You probably won't, because they're going to hate that A-wing once they've been on their two-liner. So, but whether it does happen, I don't know. But you're right, it could happen. So they could score more that way. So things you'll need. So you need an XC League account. It's the free account. You don't have to pay anything for it. You just have to sign up, put your details in. This is what we talked about before. So this is me. So my club is designated as Condors. I also belong to Wessex. I actually belong to South East Wales, Sky Surfers, and some others as well. But what you need to do, if you're flying BCC for Condors, that needs to say Condors there, then your other clubs are secondary. You can change that. I'm just trying to think of the XC League rules. There's some rules about changing that. You can certainly change it in a season, I think, but it's worth checking, see what you've got set if you've already got an account and have then joined other clubs. So that's the free account. Very importantly,
sorry Neil, if I could just mention that the paid account is only something like £6, I think.
£6. And actually what that does is it puts you into the National League rather than just the club leagues. So it is only £6 a year, entirely up to you guys whether you want to do that. All I'm saying is the free one is perfectly acceptable, at least for BCC.
Sorry, just a quick question. Do you have to join a club like South East Wales if there's a round in South East Wales?
No. So even if it's a members only site, because the BCC is happening there on that particular day or 2 days, they don't care about club membership for that. So yeah, most of their sites are members only, but that's just suspended for the round. So yeah, no need to join. It's very important that your track log, so whatever is generating your track log, will have the ability to have your name in there somewhere. It's very important that your name is in there, and it's the same name that you've registered on the BCC website. Because if those don't match up, BCC will essentially not be able to grab your track log for the day. And I think, Jack, you had that problem last year, didn't you?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
I had Jack in XC track, and I had my full name in XC League, and I didn't accept that track.
Yeah, you're right. So it's got to be all three that match. It's got to be XC League name has to be the same as your track log name, as your BCC name, exactly the same. So as long as that's fine, that will all sort through. If it's not, there are ways to correct that, but it's not easy. It takes a lot of fiddling with track logs to actually change that once they're made. So you need, well, this back to Airspace. This is really just a way of being able to visualize airspace on instruments. Does everybody know FlyXC, the website?
Oh yeah.
So FlyXC is a great website for visualizing airspace and takeoffs and routes, and you can plan. You can plan on it, so you can plan a route from a takeoff. It will give you distance, time to fly it, whole host of other things. But FlyXC is a great tool for giving you airspace and the airspace you're likely to encounter behind. So I would encourage you to have a look at that. You can also, this planned route, you can share. It will produce a code. What's the word I'm looking for? A QR code, which you can scan straight into your either XC track or Fly Sky High or anything else, and it will actually give you those waypoints then as a route. So it is a very, very nice website. FlyXC it's called. So you need a radio. Well, you don't. You should have a radio, I would say, but you don't actually need to have one. Tracking on Live Track 24 is recommended. It allows the rest of your team, for a start, to see where you are. So if you've gone over the back, if you need picking up, obviously we tend to use Telegram once you're on the ground, but actually the other team members can see how you're doing, see where you are, see how far over the back you are. So Live Track 24, you know, again, your choice, highly recommended. Telegram retrieve groups are very handy. I don't know if everybody knows XCRT, have used it, probably most have. And there's also Telegram groups that are linked to this for retrieves. So really, you need to be part of those Telegram groups, understand how to post onto XCRT and how the Telegram groups interact. Tim Pentreath has a great video on it, superb video, tells you how to set it all up, gives you all the info. And if you go onto the retrieve groups, he actually has a pinned message which repeats it all at the top. So that's going to help for retrieves. And the Condors have a BCC Telegram group. For those who aren't on it, want to be on it, want to be part of BCC, contact Viv directly. She will put you on it and get you onto there. So we get all of the announcements on there for BCC rounds. We talk on it all about the round whilst we're there. It's great. So just talk to Viv.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do there is that Telegram group is people who genuinely want to enter the BCC rounds.
Yes, they are. Yeah, rather than a thought they might, but really don't.
Yeah,
I think it's really where we're going with that, Rich, isn't it? Because I think when we looked at it last year, we had right at the beginning of the season, we said who's interested in BCC, and I think we had about 30 people on the Telegram group, but we actually struggled with 30 people to put a team of 6 in for all the rounds. As I say, we usually just about managed it, but bearing in mind that Viv and Phil are almost always available. I was almost always available. Jerry was available for most rounds. You know, that's 3 to 4 people. That's more than half of the team, and we still struggle sometimes. So, talk to Viv if you seriously want to be part of BCC. Talk to Viv. We'll get you on the group, which is where you need to be. So, final thoughts. So, great introduction to XC flying. It's mentored. It's actually a good day on the hill. You know, everybody sat there. You get the opportunity to meet lots of people from lots of different clubs. You get the opportunity to fly new sites. It encourages people to move out of their area. You know, not just fly the sites, Condor sites, Wessex sites, North Devon sites, but actually to get you somewhere else in the country, flying often bigger.
Yeah, Neil, if I can, I was just saying a great example for me of the camaraderie on this BCC thing is I arrived at Pandy, I think shortly before or after you, Neil, can't remember.
Yeah.
Got my water thing out, which was leaking everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And you remember? And a guy in the next van said, here's one. I work in bomb disposal, so we have lots of these.
Yeah, exactly.
So I've now got an industrial quality bladder. Fantastic.
You've got a bomb-proof one. Yeah,
I have. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it is good. You know, you have a good day. Well, you know, everybody wants to go XC, but actually, it's a good downhill. And like I say, you actually meet a lot of people, either that you don't see very often, or you know, just new people, and everybody mucks in, gives advice, wrong advice sometimes, the right advice others. As I say, BCC website, that is a little bit out of date, but it does still work. And if you go there, it will give you some idea of what's happened in the past. Yeah, so Matthew and club coordinators, I think it's probably difficult to really put into words how much time and effort they put into this competition behind the scenes. I've been actually on some of the software meetings this year that Tim, you know, to look at Tim's new software and the testing going on. And I would say that, you know, without Matthew and the club coordinators putting in so much effort and so many hours behind the scenes that nobody ever sees, actually the BCC wouldn't be possible. And Viv especially has put a lot of effort into the software.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So I think it's all of our thanks to them for making it possible. Yeah. So Viv's our club coordinator. I think I'm going to be, if Viv isn't available because she's away or anything, I will probably take over that role just as a temporary thing for any rounds that she can't do. So yeah, I put new web-based software for pilot registration, scoring coming soon. It actually went live on, well, a few days ago, wasn't it? Monday, I think. So it caught me out a little bit and I didn't change that slide. So the pilot registration is now very active. So you can register. I think from the discussion that I saw with Tim just before we started, I think everything else is also working in the background. Most of it won't become apparent until a round is called, when everything will sort of automatically fall into place. The idea, I think, with this software is all of the sort of more manual club coordinator tasks have almost been taken over by the software. So where Viv last year would say, right guys, a round has been called in Pandy next weekend, who's available? All of that disappears now. Basically, you give your availability on the website. Once a round is called, Viv will be able to see who's marked themselves as available. We can choose teams from that. We can allocate the team captains from that. The scoring will all be automated by the website and the software behind it. So it's been a massive undertaking of Tim's to get this working. Let's say I saw it a few times, very intuitive, looks easy to use. It was a little bit buggy when I saw it, but I think Viv especially has done a lot of work to make that right in the end. So we'll be testing it this year in the real world, and we'll see how it goes. So the only other thing is commitment to fly. One thing we ask is if you've confirmed that you can fly and the round goes ahead, that you actually honour that commitment. The fact that by the time the round turns up, it might look a little bit better on RAS nearer home, or we've been balloted out of one of the days. You know, we do need people to turn up. If you are going to be available, going to say you're available, you get picked for the team, please turn up. Notwithstanding the fact that you've potentially we've not given a place to somebody else to put you in. So please turn up. I'm sure everybody will. And I think that's it. Any more questions?
Great stuff, Neil.
All my talking done.
Yeah. Just one comment. Don't be disappointed if a round is cancelled when you turn up.
Yeah. Not only cancelled, we also had some moved last year. So we were going to fly 100 House last year, 2 days at 100 House, and they both got moved to Blorenge because of the wind direction. So yes, you can turn up. We had that last year. Turn up at Pandy and round cancelled because the weather changed considerably.
Well, it's paragliding, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just about to say the same thing.
Yeah, well, it's paragliding in the UK.
Yeah.
So Ian's right. You've just got to take it the way it is. And like I say, we were all up for 100 House last year and ended up at Blorenge. At least we flew both days at the Blorenge, so actually we had a good day. So, but yeah, any other questions, guys?
Just thank you. Good presentation.
Yeah.
No, pleasure.
Neil, thanks very much indeed. Let's give Neil a little usual.
But any questions in the future, obviously Viv is our coordinator. To join the Telegram group, Viv can answer all questions. more questions than not. So if there is anything, anybody thinks of anything, just contact me.